I used to do long-haul drives across Alaska, just me, my rig, and the road stretching into nothing. This happened in early March, about 6 years ago. The Dalton Highway was empty that night, as usual. I was heading north towards Prudhoe Bay, hauling fuel. Outside, the snow was falling light, but a thick fog had rolled in, dense and gray, curling like smoke. The CB was silent, the kind of silence that gets under your skin. No chatter from other truckers, just static and the faint hum of the engine. I'd done this route a dozen times, but that night, it felt different, heavier, like the road itself didn't want me there. About an hour past Coldfoot, I saw something, a figure on the side of the road. At first I thought maybe it was a hunter or someone who got stuck, but who the hell hikes the Dalton in a storm with no lights, no gear? As I slowed the rig, the figure stepped into the fog and vanished. I told myself I imagined it. Highway hallucinations, maybe. That happens sometimes. You drive long enough, and your mind starts to see things in the snow. But 10 minutes later, my headlights caught him again, same shape, standing perfectly still on the right shoulder. Closer this time. I couldn't make out any features, just a tall, dark silhouette. I didn't stop. I drove another 20 miles, trying not to look in the mirrors, trying to convince myself there was no one there. But then came the whispering. It started low, like wind cutting through a crack in the window. Except it wasn't wind. It was words. Indistinct, desperate. A man's voice, whispering something I couldn't make out right behind my seat. I pulled over, turned on every light in the cab, searched under the bunk, behind the seats, opened the sleeper door. Nothing. No one. The fog had thickened outside. The world beyond the windshield was just a blank canvas of gray. I sat for a moment, the engine idling. Then I saw him again, standing at the edge of the fog, closer now. Still. Watching. I don't know what made me do it, but I flicked the high beams and he disappeared again. No movement, no walking away. Just gone. I threw the rig into gear and gunned it down the highway, faster than I should have in that weather. I didn't care. I had to get away. 40 minutes passed. Then, a thump. Something hit the back of the cab. Not ice. Not a branch. Something solid. I didn't stop. I drove straight through the night. No sleep. No stops. Didn't even eat. When I finally reached Prudhoe Bay, the guy unloading asked if I'd hit something. I told him no, but he pointed at the back of the rig. There was a dent, a handprint, a perfect handprint, pressed into metal. Too big to be mine. I told myself it was ice, some twisted sheet of it molded into a freak shape. But that night, in the motel, I kept hearing the whispers. From the corner of the room, from inside the closet, from behind the window, even though it was sealed shut and snowed in. I don't drive the Dalton anymore. And I never, ever drive through fog. This happened to my cousin, Evan, about 3 years ago. He's one of those people who craves solitude. After getting out of the military, he bought a small off-grid cabin near Lake Iliamna, deep in the woods, no neighbors for miles, no cell service. Just a two-way radio, a generator, and the cold. I visited him once. Just once. He told me later the silence out there wasn't peaceful, it was loud. You could hear the quiet, and sometimes you could hear other things too. Cabin 46, the place he bought, had been abandoned for over a decade. Locals in the nearby town of Prudhoe Bay warned him about it. They said the last guy who lived there went missing in the winter of 1998. Never found. Just gone. Evan didn't believe in ghost stories. He thought they were just trying to scare the outsider away. The first few months were fine. He kept a logbook, detailed notes, like a soldier on watch. I read some of it after. At first it was normal. Weather reports, wildlife sightings. But then the entries changed. Heard footsteps on the roof last night. No tracks in the snow. Generator went off at 2:13 a.m. Came back on by itself. No explanation. Then, someone knocked on the door. 3 times. No one there. It gets worse. One night, around 3 a.m., Evan woke to a banging sound. Not the door. Not the walls. It was from inside the cabin. He thought maybe an animal had gotten in, mink, maybe a fox. So he grabbed his flashlight and started looking around. Nothing. He turned to go back to bed and saw that the front door was wide open. The wind wasn't strong enough to blow it open, and he always locked it before sleeping. Always. He stepped outside, swept the snow with the flashlight, and there, about 10 feet from the cabin, were bare footprints. Human, and no shoes. Just a trail of wet prints that led into the woods. He followed them for a few steps but stopped when he realized they weren't leading away from the cabin. They were leading toward it. The next day, he tried to radio for help, but the signal was out. He packed a bag and planned to hike to a ranger station about 10 miles away. But halfway through the woods, he heard something moving parallel to him, hidden behind the trees. He turned, aimed his rifle. Nothing. Then the smell hit him. Rotting meat, like something long dead had been left out in the sun. But it was below freezing, and there were no animal remains anywhere. He didn't make it to the ranger station. He went back to the cabin. He said he felt like something didn't want him to leave. That night, he boarded up the windows, loaded his rifle, and stayed up. Around midnight, he heard breathing, right outside the cabin wall. Heavy, ragged, like something huge was circling the perimeter. But he never saw anything. At 3:11 a.m., every door in the cabin slammed at once. He ran. Didn't pack. Didn't wait. Just ran into the woods with his boots half on until he reached a frozen creek bed where his snowmobile had been parked. He rode all the way back to Pedro Bay, frostbitten, bruised, and completely silent. He hasn't spoken about what happened on that last night, not fully, but he told me one thing I'll never forget. He said whatever it was, it knew I was alone. It had been waiting. He left everything behind. Never went back for his gear. The locals say Cabin 46 still stands, untouched, and at night, people swear you can see a light flickering inside even though there's no power. I worked at a remote environmental research station up near the Brooks Range. Just 4 of us lived there year-round, 2 researchers, a medic, and me, the mechanic. We rotated supply drops every 2 weeks. Everything else, heat, power, food, was handled in-house. We were completely cut off. That winter was brutal. 40 below most nights. Whiteouts during the day. No sunlight for weeks. Around mid-January, the station's exterior motion sensors started triggering for no reason. At first, we assumed it was the wind or maybe caribou passing too close, but the alerts only ever came between 1 and 3 a.m., and every time someone checked, nothing was out there. We started getting uneasy when those sensors began going off in a pattern, always on the same side of the building, always facing the tundra. I set up an old hunting camera just to ease our minds. It had night vision and a motion trigger. After a few nights, it caught something. Not an animal. Not a person. It was a shape. Tall, thin, almost human. But its joints were off, arms too long, neck bent wrong, like it was turning its head too far to the left. We stared at the grainy image for hours trying to explain it. Maybe a moose distorted by snow blur? Maybe a trick of the lens? But deep down, none of us bought it. Then the scratching started, from the outer walls, like fingers tracing along the siding. Slow, deliberate, as if whatever it was wanted us to know it was there. One night, just before 2 a.m., the power went out. No storm, no explanation. We had emergency battery lights, but none of them worked. All we had were candles and the red glow of backup monitors. Then we heard it, a breathing, not inside. Above, on the roof, none of us moved. For what felt like an hour, we just sat in the common room, frozen in place as the sound of slow, heavy footsteps shifted from one end of the ceiling to the other. Then it jumped down. The whole station shuddered. By the time we got the power back on the next morning, the snow outside had been cleared in a perfect circle around the station, no tracks leading to or from it. Just smooth, windless snow, like something had hovered above us all night. We sent out a distress ping. The bush pilot arrived 2 days later. We didn't wait for protocol. We packed what we could and left. The station was shut down that season. I heard later the next crew reported similar incidents, only this time someone went missing. Gone during a routine perimeter check. His radio was found stuck in the snow, still transmitting static. Nobody talks about it officially. But sometimes, I dream about that thing. That shape standing out on the tundra just beyond the edge of the lights. Watching. Waiting.